Assalamu alaikum everyone. Hello and welcome to season 2 of the Sister Station podcast. Yay! With your host, me, Mu'mina Koleosho, a Nigerian, Yoruba, British Muslim writer, content creator, and youth advocate based in Scotland who uses storytelling to amplify the voices of Black and Muslim women. I'm hoping that this episode is going to be short and sweet, chill vibes, just like a little catch up. What have I been up to? So today will be a solo episode, but for the rest of the season, I've got quite a few guests lined up. So we've got that to look forward to over the coming months. And, you're just here listening to me spitball literally on the episode. But this is just the kind of vibe that I have sometimes. Like, if you ask any of my friends, family members, I can just be quite off the cuff, spontaneous, figure things out as we go along, because sometimes I just work better that way. Sometimes in all of the build-up and the pre-planning, there's too much time for me to chicken out of stuff. So sometimes it's better to just throw me in and then sink or swim. And I'm saying all of this as if it does not yield, it yields results, but then sometimes what we had to do in order to yield those results are things that cause me a lot of stress and heartache. If I'm being completely frank, this is a little bit of foreshadowing. When I tell you the kind of drama, the kind of wahala that I have seen, it's not funny. But it's funny, but it's not at the same time. I have really gone off on a tangent, and I realized that I actually wanted to start this episode by talking about the name and the meaning behind, or at least the origin story of the name of this podcast, and a little bit about the behind the scenes, how that came to be. So, Sister Station. Why Sister Station? Well, one of the original ideas that I had before I got to Sister Station was I was thinking of calling this podcast Sister Space or something along those lines, because I wanted something that would be able to sort of represent this idea of community and sisterhood, but then also like a shared space, a shared location, if that makes sense, like a sort of virtual gathering of sorts, especially because I am planning to build a community around this podcast. So I've already merged my open mic that I was hosting on my Mina's Musings Instagram account. I've now sort of transferred that over to the Sister Station into Instagram, because the long-term plan and idea was always that I wanted these two things to kind of coexist. I've got that. And then I'm hoping that inshallah I'm able to build this community to not just exist online, but also exist offline as well, and host in-person events and really expand the ways that we can connect and build a community, build that sisterhood. I always had that sort of future vision, and I wanted it to reflect in the name as well. And I also wanted it to be a little bit like a plan. A plan? Oh my goodness. Wow. I wanted to say play on words and I wanted to say pun, and it just, both words exited my brain at the same time. But I wanted it to kind of be like a pun with a little bit of a double meaning, i.e. like the idea of a shared space and a shared community, but then also space itself, like outer space, because this is just a very personal thing. I like outer space. I like space vibes, the space aesthetic, planets, stars, astronomy, you name it. I just really like space, and I like sci-fi and stuff. So I just wanted that to reflect in the branding. So, and there is this idea as well that with outer space, you have different worlds, different universes. This podcast as well is like different part of the world, or sort of somewhere that exists in the cyber world, cyberspace kind of thing. I don't know if I'm explaining this well, and hopefully everybody has gotten the gist by this point, and if not, I'll just move on to the next point. That was all of what I was going for, right? So when it came to thinking of the name, and I like the idea of having some sort of alliteration or just something that would make the name easy to remember. And there were just a lot of names that were thrown around, and I remember sort of pitching the different ideas that I had to different people and running it by them and being like, oh, what do you think of this one? What about that one? And I was just agonizing on this for so long. And when I thought that I had one, I thought that I had Sister Space because it literally has space in it. The problem was that I looked up that name and there were other organizations that already existed that had very similar names. So I thought that, nah, I need to scrap that. But I was like, how else do I, get the vibe and the aesthetic that I'm going for, that I'm able to have that community sisterhood space vibes all in one? And then, yeah, Sister Station was born. And I was like, this is perfect because I still have the whole sisterhood aspect. It's also a little bit of a nod to one of my biggest inspirations. Shout out the Digital Sisterhood. They are honestly so incredible podcast and community movement that has inspired me as well. So that was one of the reasonings behind wanting to have sister in the podcast name. And then Station effectively represents the shared community idea that I was going for, plus it links to Space Station, which is why the logo as well has the little space inspired design. And I had the vision and I was able to see it through. So that's something that I'm quite happy about. And it also just got to a point that when I was sitting on the name idea and going through all these different options, part of what made me just go with Sister Station, because I was like, at this point, I'm just stalling, I'm procrastinating. I just need to pick something and run. So yeah, there we have it. That is the little origin story behind Sister Station, and hopefully that's kind of clued you in a little bit more into the mission behind this podcast, the aims, the goals, the ideas, and yeah, inshallah we can make it happen. So in terms of the podcasting itself, as in the practicalities, logistics, how did it all start? So I think I've hinted at the fact that I have wanted to start a podcast for at least 5 years now. During the COVID pandemic, well, no, before the pandemic started, I think I had been listening to podcasts, and this was early podcast days, like listening to podcasts on SoundCloud, that kind of thing. And then in 2020, like sort of 2020 to 21, when the pandemic started and a lot of people had a lot more free time on their hands, everybody was at home and decided that, yes, me too, I want to start a podcast though. So everybody was getting into it. One person that I knew from uni started a podcast with her brother, and I thought that was really cool as well. They talked about like quite a lot of social, political type stuff at that time, like things like Black Lives Matter and similar topics. And I remember I thought that their podcast was really cool and engaging, and I thought like, I'd like to do something similar in the future. But what held me back for the longest time, I mean, so many things. So many things. But I think just like how podcasting had a bit of a boom then, and then obviously podcasting has really picked up in recent years because anyone and everyone and their grandma and their dog has a podcast, right? And for some people, they would say, the market is oversaturated. What's the point of trying to get into that? That was another thing that held me back for a bit. And then just my own sort of doubts. Is there anything of that's beneficial or of substance that I can add? And I thought the answer was no, that there's no point. There are already people doing the same or similar kind of thing. And I was also just very self-conscious and scared of the idea that, hey, I'll release an episode and it will be out there in the world of the internet ad infinitum, which is honestly very scary. But when I think about it, I'm not entirely sure exactly what it was that helped me to get over that fear. I guess I feel somewhat safe or comfortable knowing that I don't just hop on and I say stuff and next thing it's online and there's no sort of editing or vetting. I think I feel a lot more comfortable in the fact that most episodes I'll have listened to them at least 3 times, if not many more times, in the process of editing them And so some episodes I'm sure I can probably recite off by heart. It gets to that point sometimes. And by that point I'm confident and comfortable in thinking that, okay, this is about to go out into the world, and I don't feel as apprehensive that I will say things that I come to regret later. And inshallah, I pray that things stay that way, because I only want to be somebody that shares things that are of benefit, or even if it's just to entertain people, at least puts a smile on your face, makes people laugh. I don't want to share anything that is, and anything that's questionably, I was going to say questionably moral, anything that's morally questionable. I wouldn't want to be somebody that propagates stuff like that. So I try to keep it chill, try to keep it halal, all these things. That's what we're trying to do on this podcast. So the point that I was trying to get to was, a lot of these things were holding me back, and I think where before, like, I think coming up to maybe towards the end of last year, started this year, for a little while I would kind of kick myself for not starting sooner. I was like, oh, all those months and years procrastinating. If I'd started back then, think of how far along I'd be now, think of where I'd be now. But at the same time, God's timing is the best timing. I wasn't ready then. And even though up until I released that first episode, I still did not feel like I was ready. But at least, alhamdulillah, I'm older, I'm wiser, I have more life experience, I have more experience, knowledge that can inform the podcast, can inform the direction I take and what I do, how I say things. So I feel like this definitely was the best time, that it's a good thing that I didn't start any earlier. So I don't look back and regret that anymore now. And to be honest, if I'd started earlier, I probably wouldn't have the timing for it, and I probably wouldn't have stuck to it as well. It would have been just another abandoned project to add to my museum of failures. The podcast could have so easily been that. And inshallah, it will not be that, because I plan to be here for a while. I'm going to stick around, inshallah. So that's the idea. And when I finally got over all of those internal sort of psychological hurdles, and then it was time to practically start the podcast. And fortunately for me, this past year, I have been networking like there's no tomorrow. You can call me 5G. It's really been on that level. And one of the organizations I joined, My Life, My Say, they have a leadership program that I have been part of for the last year. And as part of the program, essentially there's an element of mentorship. And so our community manager, Paris, shout out Paris, when I told her in one of our very first meetings, I was like, oh, I'm hoping to start a podcast, blah, 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 bunch of other things. And she said that, oh, she knows somebody who's into podcasting, she can put me in touch. I said, okay, cool. So put me in touch with Lily, and Lily is the director of the Be the Change Network, which is the media podcasting network that I'm part of. Interestingly enough, Lily said they're actually looking for more people to join the network at the moment, and they have a form out, and the form closes tomorrow. And I remember when I heard this, my alarm bells were ring ding dinging. I was like, tomorrow? How am I going to get this application in for tomorrow? I was so tempted to just fashion the thing. I was like, I beg, the stress I've seen for this life, all the job applications that are waiting for me, and I'll be spending my time on this. But I decided, you know what? This is what I wanted to do, because interestingly enough, even before I applied to join the media network, I'd actually applied for another podcasting grant program, I think maybe about a month or two before. And I wasn't successful in that application. But I realized that, all the effort I put into crafting the application for that podcast opportunity, why don't I just take that application, revamp it, and put it in for this media network? So I did just that. And the rest is history, as they say, because I joined the network, and alhamdulillah, Lily and all the network members have been absolutely amazing and super supportive of my podcast, and it's just been great. And all of the sort of training resources and everything that they've shared have been really helpful as well. So now, let me set the scene. I've said I'm going to start this podcast. I've joined a podcast network. I've completed the training. I've recorded my episodes because, funnily enough, okay, no, I think I skipped a little part of the story. So now we get to needing to record the episodes. And I actually recorded all of my guest episodes before I recorded episode 1. And that was because I had been sitting on episode 1 for so long. I had recorded it, re-recorded it. Some of them, the episodes were getting super long, maybe up to 40-45 minutes of just me rambling and not knowing what I was saying. And I was like, nah, I can't put this out. It's not giving. The people will probably have fallen asleep after the 7th minutes. Like, I can't put this out into the world. So I decided, you know what, let me give up on that and let me just have conversations with people, because often that makes it easier for kind of fruitful discussions to come about as opposed to just me spitting on the mic, as they say. So I recorded my guest episodes first. I had them all in the bank. And then when I had agreed that, hey, okay, this is the date that I want to release the first episode, I'd started prepping all the social media assets, everything was going well. I still hadn't recorded that episode 1. I was still like, I need to get to doing this thing. So finally, I've taken some notes. I've decided, okay, I have a clear direction. I have a vision. This last time that I record this episode 1, whatever happens, I'm just going to record this thing, edit it, do a little bit of maybe chop here, clip there, and it's going live. It is going outside because I don't tire. This road has been too long. I'm tired of hearing my voice at this point. But yeah, so I was like, okay, episode's ready, everything is ready, and I was, this was launch day. I was very apprehensive and all these things. So the episode went out, and at first, all was well for about maybe 5-10 minutes. Then I went to go and listen to the episodes, and I realized that, oh my goodness, I sent the wrong cut. Yes, it was the wrong episode, as in the wrong version of the final episode. So you know how when you're saving things that you might say like, this is version 1, this is version 2, this is the final one, okay, this is the final one, okay, this is the really, really final, we're not doing anything after this, I'm fed up, I'm tired, one, right? So me, I did not choose the correct, very, very final, we are tired version. I chose the one before that, which still had some mistakes, which still had some repetition, which still had, in short, it was incorrect. It was some level of raw footage, and it was out in the world to embarrass me. I was mortified. I can't remember if I did cry, but I was close to tears. I was like, full meltdown, panic. But I was like, you know what, we've got to problem solve, we gotta sort things out. Long story short, fortunately, only like 2-3 people had listened to the incorrect version. So by the time the correct version was available, the wrong one deleted, everything sorted. I was like, okay, phew, I can breathe again. But my goodness, was that a very stressful period. But it just felt so much like, wow, I finally get round to posting a podcast episode, and the first day I stumble like stumbling block into oblivion on such an astronomically, bombastically, like, I thought to myself, like, is this a sign that maybe I should not be doing this podcast, though? Is that what God is trying to tell me? I was scared. I was absolutely so shaken, right? So, I had to go back to the drawing board a little bit, do some spiritual soul searching. I really had to check myself. I was like, what are my intentions for this podcast? Like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why am I stressing myself? And again, I was very distraught, very emotional, and it was a rough time. But alhamdulillah, we got through it, and I realized that I had been reading into things the wrong way, because where I was thinking that maybe this was some kind of sign or signal that I should abort mission and not podcast, um, I realized that actually the lesson here was probably just that, hey, nobody's perfect. Everybody messes up. And that's okay, because we can solve the problems and rectify things, and then it will be okay, and we learn from the mistakes and we move on. And now looking back, I realize that as in that's how I see it, to be honest. Just as everybody can mess up, you can mess up big time, but like you can never mess up so badly that there's no way to come back. Like, I pray that I'm never in such a situation where it feels like there's no way to come back from a mistake, because for the most part, as dire as it will seem in that situation, there will always be a way out. There will always be, a way to correct, a way to make things better, and then we're just wary for next time. And now I know the steps to take to avoid such a thing from happening again. You always like double, triple, quadruple checking every episode before I release it. This thing has to be as close to perfect as humanly possible, right? So yeah, that was episode 1, and then after that there was some more drama that I might clue you guys in the future. To say, I think that's enough drama for one episode. So I honestly had a lot more notes of things that I was going to say or discuss, and seeing as this has now taken me like almost 45 minutes, I'll probably need to either re-record this entire thing or record some parts or just cut some things so that this episode that I declared short and sweet will actually be shorter and sweeter. I'd say that the key points were really just the podcast behind the scenes and my learning points, my reflections. I think maybe I'll leave tips for starting your own podcast for another day, because that could be a whole episode in and of itself. And in terms of what everyone can expect for this next season, again, I want to kind of keep things a little bit top secret, keep the people in suspense, a little bit of mystery, but it's going to be, relatively similar to season 1. I'm going to have some friends on here talking about their different experiences, sharing different stories. As usual, we'll sprinkle in some advice in there, hopefully leave you with some food for thought and some recommendations. There's a bit of homework to do after the episode is finished. And yeah, I hope that everybody who enjoyed season 1 will enjoy season 2. I hope that all of the newcomers on the podcast have a great time as well. I hope that everyone that has met me here on this journey continues to stick around for a while and we continue this path together, inshallah. And I hope that what we share on this podcast benefits you in this life and in the next. So now, before I leave you all till next episode, I will share a little poem. And this poem, some of you might have heard it already, because the first time I shared it in public was at the Push the Boat Out International Poetry Festival in 2024. And I also shared the video on Instagram as well. So yeah, some of you might be familiar with this poem already, but for those that aren't, basically I wrote this poem from a place where I was really in the trenches of this world of job hunting or endless job search. And it was honestly really getting to me. It's just rejection after rejection after rejection. And it just seemed to be going from bad to worse to worser to worstest. I don't know what you can get beyond worstest source. I don't even know what else is there, but I'm sure some of you are listening to this now and wondering how on earth did we go from you're about to share a poem to what's the sauce? But honestly, let me cook. Let me cook the sauce. I actually cracked myself up too much. Anyway, so I was in that place of mind, and this poem came from that, and it was just like a little humorous take on the whole experience because being rejected so many times and having so many awful experiences with job searching, job hunting, recruitment, etc., and feeling like it really did its number on my self-confidence and my self-esteem and everything. So yeah, this was kind of just me writing a bit about that and how it felt like all these jobs, they keep asking this from me, asking that from me, but it doesn't feel like it's me anymore. I just feel like I'm just reducing myself and reducing who I am just to fit all of these narrow boxes that I need to somehow try and fill just to get this job. Like it was just feeling very, very soul sucking, so to speak. So anyway, the poem, after all of that preamble, is called Describe Yourself in 3 words. Just 3. To convey all of me. Not even 10 or perhaps 50, but reduce myself to 3. A description full of labels, titles, names, summaries, or bios. How do I pitch myself in just 50 words? How do I sell myself in less than 1,000 characters? Tailor my CV, but there's more to me. Outside of all my skills, experiences, and ability, so many different things add together to make up my identity. I write poetry, I speak poetry, that's probably what you expect of me, and it's true, but that is just the tip of the iceberg, a sneak peek, a little view. But you asked me for words, so that's what I'll give you. A world of words to describe my little universe. At the center, at my core, is my faith and my culture. Not the full picture, but part of my story. I've moved country a couple of times. I like to read and write in my spare time. I go to the gym when I have time. That's a lie, because I always make time. Keeping up a Duolingo streak as a pastime. I like to try new things, meet new people and places for the first time, despite how it scared me so much the last time. And I suppose, well, that's all I'll share for now, this time. We'll see what words I have to offer for next time. The end. And that is a wrap for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. Please don't forget to follow, like, share, download, subscribe, and rate the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your preferred streaming platform. And you can also find us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Sister Station Podcast. And you can also find me, your host, Mutmana, on LinkedIn and Instagram at Mina's Musings. And finally, thanks again for tuning into this episode. I hope that you come back for more. But until then, Assalamu alaikum and bye.